Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Devontae, and I sacrificed my time so you don't have to. I was reading the comments yesterday, right? And something caught my attention. One of these guys in the comment section was bitching about one of my, opinions within the video. And he said, oh, man, you made a 30-minute rant based off of what you caught off of Twitter? Like, did you really do that? You made a 30-minute rant thanks to what you're saying off of Twitter. And it's like, isn't that usually how most ideas get started? You see one little small thing, you take it, and then it just explodes like a supernova, and it creates a whole fucking new plethora of star systems. Like, that's usually how that works, right? And, when I seen that tweet, right, talking about AEW and, got my gears kind of going when talking about the future of AEW, I went back in the past and I try to look at some of the pinpoints because I don't like to make the same point over and over and over again. If I can avoid it, I try my best to avoid it. And I was looking at some of my past videos, right? In particular, even the one that I just did last Wednesday with Will Ospreay and MJF. And although I still believe in the points that I was making, I do want to be a little bit more cognizant about how people are reflecting off of the things that I'm saying in the video, right? Because it's nice to preach to the choir. I think people say all the time, oh, you're preaching to the choir. Oh, you're getting people riled up that already believe in the things that you believe in. Make no mistake about it, that's going to continue happening. But I do want to bring people over. Not to get too political here, but one of the things about Donald Trump that I'm noticing right now, the more and more and more I'm seeing his campaign, especially compared to 2016 and 2020, is that he's acting way more moderate, right? Whether these are things that I disagree with him on, whether you're talking about abortion, whether it's his stance more so on, for an example, I'm trying to think of something else outside of abortion that he's really, really moderate on at the moment. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but more in particular, abortion, right? But it can go a little bit deeper. He's campaigning a lot more moderate, right? He's very center-right with his campaign currently at the moment, right? Taking things off the table that most Democrats would have liked to use as an argument that they can't kind of do right now without showing that they're way more left on the situation than what he's on right now, right? And I think that's a bit inspirational as far as something that I can take from an attitudinal standpoint going forward when discussing AEW. There is nothing in AEW currently at the moment that makes me go and say to myself, I cannot wait to watch this product. That just is what it is. Some people may be fans of AEW, and that's understandable. And, in the end of the day, that's just your priorities as a professional wrestling fan. But me personally, I know what wrestling can be. And for the majority of my audience who has lived through things like the Hulkamania era, they lived through the Attitude Era, they look at the product and they say to themselves, even though it's bad at the moment, there's so much potential within most of the wrestlers that you currently have at the moment, whether it's AEW, whether it's WWE, there's a lot, or hell, even TNA at this moment. There's single superstars that if you can pick out, yes, from a majority standpoint, the majority of them, yes, you can kind of do away with them, right? But there's still this takeaway from the fact, like, I'll just give you an example, right? I look at things like TNA, and I think to myself, Joe Hendry is super over. You could take that, and there's a bunch of trademarks, there's a bunch of catchphrases. Not saying that he has any catchphrases, but I'm saying there's a bunch of things within Joe Hendry that you can exploit out of that character, and he could be a big deal. You look at something like SmackDown, for an example, you still have people who is starting to falter on me a little bit, but nevertheless still relatively popular if you knew what you were doing with the character. Guys like LA Knight, obviously you still got the Bloodline, you still got Cody Rhodes and stuff like that. That's a couple right there, right? Logan Paul can fit that criteria also. You go to Raw, for an example, you still have to work on him a little tiny bit, but, Damian Priest, he's more than capable, obviously. You want to put aside guys like CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, who are way too obvious. There are people like that. You go to NXT, for an example, there are people who are still there that you say to yourself, well, okay, there are a few that I could pick out of the bunch. If anything, NXT probably has the wealth of talent, in my opinion, if you knew what you were doing and you knew how to build up and you tell them that to sell so much. Guys like Trick Williams is still there. I believe in him a little tiny bit. Ethan Page is there also. I have no problems with Ethan Page. Oba Femi is obviously another one. There's a couple there, right? Then you go to AEW, and as much as I dislike him, I see the possibilities, obviously, within a guy like MJF, right? Obviously, Wardlow is still there. you knew what you were doing when he gets back from injury. You can definitely still build someone like a Will Hobbs. There's potential in every wrestling company and in every wrestling brand that if you knew what you were doing, you can absolutely have a renaissance. Obviously, you want to prioritize most of these people that I'm mentioning right now at the moment, and you want to make sure who you want to feature, who happens to be the best, based off of what stories they could convey a lot better to most of the modern audience. But at the same time, the talent is still there. Is it as talented as the rosters of the past? Well, see, that's the problem. I will never know that because you can never get them to their fullest potential because you're so busy on other things in regards to professional wrestling that you're not focusing on the aesthetic and the optics. I keep using those two words lately, but I think they're very, very important whenever trying to resonate with people outside of the fan base already. There are things that you are not attributing to them actually going outside of their comfort zone, being the professional wrestling industry, and actually having to engage with those people. Like I'm saying right now, as far as me trying to cultivate my attitude, my opinions based off of my attitude in order to bring people over. You know, me sitting here constantly telling you guys the problems with AEW or the problems with WWE. I don't know who I'm talking to outwardly. You know what I mean? Outside of you guys, I still want to bring people over so that way we can all talk about the problems that are currently happening in professional wrestling. And maybe, just maybe, it's not going to happen overnight. It might not happen over a year. It might take a decade long. But maybe the more and more we do this, we start to seep into people's minds that it's more than just the in-ring action in regards to professional wrestling. You know, I remember Tupac saying this in an interview. And I think I mentioned this before, but just in case if I didn't, I never really set out to be a guy to want to change the world or anything like that. But, you know, I do see there's potential within the platform where if I'm not here to change the world, I can at least spark the idea within the guy who could probably potentially change the professional wrestling industry, right? That's at least how I look at it. You know, there's a couple of people who are subscribed to me going off of my analytics whenever I look at my YouTube studios. Believe it or not, I only have 4,000 subs, but I can tell you, man, there's at least, I counted the last time I checked, around 20 subscriptions. I got 20 people, because they let you know how many people are subscribed to you, you know, via the number, right? Like they'll say, oh, this person has the most subs who are sub to you. There are people who have over 700,000 subs who are sub to me. And there's a couple of people, over 100,000 subs, last time I counted, it was like around 20, that are subscribed to me. So anything to get those people to know that I'm not batshit crazy. And don't get it twisted, it's really fun to yell, it's really fun to scream, it's really fun to do all that kind of stuff, and that's not going away, trust me, not anytime soon. But that should really be saved for things that are just so insanely fucking egregious that you have to rant about it, right? You have no choice but to rant about it. You know, things like what happened with MJF and Will Ospreay, things that happened with Anarchy in the Arena, for an example, although really, really frustrating, it shouldn't be something that I should be yelling and screaming about, because although I don't give a shit who thinks about me in a negative light in terms of being unhinged and shit like that, that just comes with the territory. I don't give a fuck about that. But what I do give a fuck about is whether or not those people in the message that I'm conveying, is it gonna resonate with them the same as if I would have just said it plainly and clearly without having to yell and scream, right? Because you could probably not have even heard this kind of position before, and then you tune into the video and I'm gonna make a bunch of fucking points that you've never heard of before, and you're gonna listen to those points and then you're gonna say to yourself, damn, okay, well, let me dig a little bit deeper, let me see if there's anybody else who thinks like this or talks like this or whatever the case may be. And then I just completely ruined that because I'm yelling like a fucking maniac. Like I said, I think there's a time and place to yell and scream and be unhinged and shit like that. It's not quite, you know, applicable to want to do that, and, you know, for something so mundane, right? Well, at least mundane to the extent that it doesn't necessitate it, if you're getting what I'm saying, right? So damn sure gonna change up how I actually convey my message with most of you people, because there are still certain problems with AEW, for an example. I'm gonna use them as a perfect example, because with all of the problems that are in WWE at the moment, they still have stories that people want to tune into. They still have favorites within the company that people like and that they follow, and, you know, there's still mix and matches that you have not yet really even scratched the surface of, that has a bunch of potential, that although for all the faults of Triple H, I still have more faith in him to put across those stories and tell those stories a lot better than in recent past, right? In recent memory, I think it'd be probably best to say, right? Not to say that I approve of most of what Triple H has done. I just have more confidence in him than anybody within professional wrestling currently at the moment to really do the things that I want to see done. Now, that's not to say that the things that I want to see done in professional wrestling currently at the moment is something that I feel he's going to do well, but I feel out of Tony Khan, out of whoever's running TNA at the moment, out of any of those guys, even Shawn Michaels, not because I don't have any confidence in Shawn Michaels, but because with all due respect to Shawn Michaels, it's NXT, so the one fault for NXT is that there's really no consequences, right? Unfortunately, it's not really a brand, it's a developmental company or a developmental brand, so everything that happens in there is really inconsequential. That's the only bad thing about NXT that I would love to get more behind of if it had more continuity behind it, right? More importantly, if it was pretty much, because it feels like with NXT, it's like a huge non-canon. That's my only problem with it. But, you know, like I said, there are still a bunch of potential things that can happen within WWE. Like, for an example, we still haven't scratched the surface yet. Legitimately, I feel with Drew McIntyre and CM Punk, we're just now getting at surface level. We still have yet to get around what's going to happen with the Bloodline when Roman Reigns comes back. We still have yet to touch on Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. You know what I'm trying to say? There's still a bunch of things that we could touch on, even from the women's perspective. I still want to see Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill, right? I still want to see the potential rivalry that can extend past what we're seeing right now with Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley. You know what I mean? There's still a bunch of things that can happen. The Intercontinental Championship, whether or not it's going to be on Braun Breaker, how is Gunther going to be as the world champion? I still have a bunch of things I can look at with WWE and say to myself, you have a bunch of faults, but I think it's balanced with all the positives that are currently happening right now in the company. With AEW, I don't get that feeling. There is nothing that I'm looking forward to at the moment. Even coming up into Wednesday with Blood and Guts, I don't care. Going into Wembley, I don't care. That's what I was seeing with the MJF and Will Ospreay thing. It's not that I have a problem with MJF and Will Ospreay. Like I said, they have their faults. No wrestler is perfect in professional wrestling to me nowadays. You know what I'm trying to say? MJF and Will Ospreay do have their faults, but I would definitely say that if they had a good enough story, I absolutely would be. It'd be a draw for me to want to watch them at Wembley Stadium, and to just outright take that off the table by having them go out there and wrestle for a full hour and legitimately do everything underneath the sun. That was the frustration for me as to why I felt the way that I felt at such an extreme level. And to know that, well, that's now taken off the table, one of the only things that's left, and then they're already bumblefucking around and confusing us with something that should be pretty straightforward with Swerve Strickland and what's his name again? Hangman Page. That should be straightforward, right? But even then, with that match right there, you've done so much in the past to undercut it that you're going into Wembley Stadium and it's like, okay, what are they going to do that's going to usurp all the things that they've done in the past? More in particular, their Texas Death Match. That's the problem with AEW, is that they do so much so soon and they don't rein it in, and then you just get this big explosion, right? And it's like, well, shit, it would have been nice if you would have just let it settle a little tiny bit. I would have liked for that shit to marinate. A one-on-one match with a good story is always going to be more compelling than a random gimmick match every fucking time. There is no gimmick match in the world, whether it's a ladder match, whether it's a Hell in a Cell match, whether it's a no disqualification, hardcore, extreme rules, false count anywhere inside your booty hole match. It does not fucking matter. A TLC match, nothing. Money in the Bank match, nothing. Last man standing, I quit, say whatever you want to say. Cage match, whatever. No wrestling gimmick will ever triumph over a one-on-one quality months-told story with twists and turns, fucking swerves, all that kind of shit. Nothing will ever usurp that. Nothing. No moves, nothing will ever take the place of good storytelling. And if you knew what you were doing with Will Ospreay and MJF, that angle that presumably could have and should have happened in place of that one-on-one hour-long match, that right there, that could have been the highlight of the week. That right there is creating moments. And that's the problem with AEW when it comes to the wrestling aspect, is that they ignore that kind of stuff. They ignore the fact that everything that you're doing at the moment is not even coming at the cost of your talent and their health. It's coming at the cost of what the fuck you're doing currently at the moment in regards to not just your prioritization, but your creative structure. That match that you had at Wembley Stadium, if you played your card, or the match that you had that could have been at Wembley Stadium, you know what I mean? Like, it could have been half the time at Wembley Stadium, and hell, who knows? You play your cards right, you give these guys legitimate time, they fight for the world championship after having about 4 or 5 months of this kind of feud, then you could have done the hour-long match. This match could have taken place somewhere in October to build up to Full Gear. That's what I would have done. I would have been telling angles upon angles upon angles upon angles. I would have gotten the International Championship off of Will Ospreay, because that belt holds back the potential of both of these superstars because they're bigger than that belt. You should have had angle on top of angle on top of angle, made it as personal as humanly fucking possible going into Wembley Stadium. That card right there should be simple as fuck. Your 3 top matches should easily be off of what you've been telling from a story standpoint. It should be Heyman Adam Page and Swerve Strickland fighting over the World Championship with all their history, even though I feel that you over-embellish a little tiny bit the feud because it's been so off and on and you've done so much that you kind of ruined it a little tiny bit, but we're not going to hang our hat on that. Heyman Adam Page and Swerve Strickland should be in the main event for the World Championship. MJF and Will Ospreay should be the penultimate match to that. And theoretically, I would think that Toni Storm and Mariah May should probably be third in line. That's how it should be done going into Wembley Stadium. That's what you should do. But instead, we're so close to the promised land in regards to the pay-per-view, and you've undercut so many things that I'm not even sure of the potential of Will Ospreay and MJF even happening at Wembley Stadium. From the rumors that I'm seeing right now, it seems like they want to do Ricochet and Will Ospreay at Wembley Stadium. So that's what I'm saying. And I'm not saying that's confirmed. That is absolutely not confirmed. But that's the rumor. The reason why they rushed MJF and Will Ospreay was to get Ricochet there to have the match with Will Ospreay going into Wembley Stadium. And it's like, to take a feud and a story like that off the table because you want to see this match. That's the kind of shit that boggles the mind for me as a wrestling fan. Why would you take a feud like that off the table when it had so much promise in the beginning, especially stemming off of the stuff that happened with Daniel Garcia? You're going to ruin 2 names as far as what could have been a promising match going into Wembley Stadium in order to separate them off to still do the Daniel Garcia and MJF match. Which, mind you, the heat for that, it's not as if it's not there because MJF dogged this dude out. But that's a match that could have easily taken place as a special match on the main event of Dynamite. That's what I would have done. That match could have easily been a special attraction match for a special television match going into Dynamite, or hell, maybe one of your B pay-per-view shows like All In coming up, or was it All In, or is it All Out? Which one is All In? All In, I think, is the Wembley show. All Out, my bad. That's like a week later, right? That could have been an All Out. But instead, you do this because you so desperately want to get the match of Will Ospreay versus Ricochet in. There's no story to it at all. Your story is talking about the history of 2 wrestlers. There's more to wrestling than you focusing strictly on the history of the 2 wrestlers. You know what I mean? That right there, I don't like that kind of shit. That kind of shit, it fucks with my mind. It fucks with my brain when people do that. And like I said, I'm going to get my emotions more in control so I can be able to convey that message. That makes no sense. That you have 2 potential big names currently at the moment, at least within the sphere of AEW. You had a promising feud. You could have easily told that story, and then they could have had the match at Wembley. And then you could have built that up for the next couple of months. And then eventually when you get into Full Gear, they could probably fight for the World Championship if you knew what you were doing. Instead, you usurp all that because you so desperately want to get the one-on-one 7-star match with Ricochet and Will Ospreay. That kind of thinking right there, it's just so beneath me when it comes to professional wrestling, and it just gets me so fucking frustrated. It really is. I mean, all the talent in the world that you have in that roster right there from an in-ring perspective, and you so desperately want to get Will Ospreay and Ricochet in, that's a Mark mentality. Is it not? Is that not a Mark mentality to take that position and think to yourself that what you're doing currently at the moment, that's what's going to not only make money from a business standpoint, but from a fan standpoint, you're really getting around making moments because you so desperately want to get a video game match in that made you super happy as a Mark. That's just mind-numbing to me. And it gets even worse than that, because that's the kind of mentality that they have. That they feel like switching the theme song up for Collision. Yeah, I seen the news on that. Them switching the theme song up on Collision every fucking 2 months. Them switching the intro graphic for Dynamite every 2 months. Them believing that, hey, we could swap out this commentator for this commentator. And then it's like, bro, you're moving chairs around in order to get around the fact that your house is fucking dirty. Your house has holes inside the wall. There's creatures living inside your walls. There's mold. There's mildew, right? There's shit happening. Your roof is starting to cave in on itself. There's a bunch of things that are currently happening at the moment. And your primary focus is not to fix any of those things, but to move furniture around to say, yeah, this is nice. We're doing good. It's like the thumbnail that I used yesterday's video with the bear sitting in the middle of the fire. Everything's fine. Everything's not fine, man. And like I said, I got to do better with making sure that message gets across so people can hear it. Hopefully they can run it up the ladder. Hopefully everybody else hears it. I don't even give a shit if you don't even take my talking point as far as me voicing it and then using me. You can steal my talking points if you. I don't give a shit as long as the talking point gets across, because in the end of the day, I just want to see good professional wrestling. That's it. That's my motive. I just want to see good professional wrestling. And no matter who does it, no matter who says it, as long as I get it, I'm perfectly A-okay. But with that being said, let me get the fuck up out of here. I just wanted to rant a little tiny bit about my position as far as my stance of professional wrestling today. How I feel that professional wrestling can absolutely be a hell of a lot better if I just shut the fuck up, or at least lower my voice, or at least take the time to understand that, well, Devontae, you're doing more damage than you are doing good, alright? Yelling and screaming and being unhinged and saying all crazy shit, that's for the people who are already here. What about the people who want to hear legitimate, false, or professional wrestling? How are they gonna listen to anything that you're saying if you're out there fucking screaming your heart out like a fucking banshee? And you know what? You're absolutely right, man. It's like the political equivalent to gathering independents over to the right? Gotta make sure to keep my head on straight. Gotta make sure to stay focused. The task at hand. We want more Triple H and Austin feuds and less of whatever the fuck is going on currently in AEW at the moment. So stay focused, stay vigilant, and make sure that you get the message across. G.I. Jose. Adios. All right, folks, I'm gonna catch y'all later. Adeuces and a P. Eyes.